World War III. I mean, you've seen that phrase everywhere, right? It's all over the headlines, it's popping up on your social media feeds. It's a really heavy thought. But today, we're going to try to get to the bottom of it. Are we looking at a real threat, or is this just fear getting out of control? So let's just ask it straight up. Are we on the brink of another massive global conflict? The news can be pretty overwhelming, so let's try to cut through all that noise together and really figure out what's going on. Our goal here is pretty simple. Let's move away from the chaos of just feeling scared and get into the clarity that comes from looking at the facts. By the end of this, you should have a much better way to think about the situation for yourself. First things first, let's be real. This anxiety isn't coming out of thin air. You're not crazy for feeling this way. So what are the actual events happening in the world that are fueling this widespread sense of unease? It really boils down to what feels like a perfect storm of three big things. First, you've got several very real, very active conflicts happening right now. Second, these aren't small, isolated incidents. We're talking about major world powers getting involved, and that just raises the stakes for everybody. And third, on top of all that, you have social media, which acts like a giant amplifier for information and for fear. It just spreads like wildfire. That combination is exactly why it can feel like we're standing on the edge of something huge. Okay, so we've kind of unpacked the feeling. Now let's switch gears and get into the facts. Because if we're going to talk about a world war, we really have to be clear on what that term actually means. So what is it, really? This definition right here, this is absolutely crucial. A true world war isn't just any big conflict. It specifically means you have multiple major powers fighting directly against each other. And the fallout has to be global. It has to hit economies, supply chains, and just the daily lives of people everywhere. Let's use that as our benchmark as we move forward. And this chart really lays it out clearly. See, a regional conflict, even a really serious one, is usually contained to one area. Major powers might get involved, sure, but it's often indirectly, sending money or weapons or support. But a world war? That's a whole different ballgame. The scope is global. And the key difference is that direct military-on-military engagement between those major powers. That distinction is everything when we're trying to understand today's world. All right, now we get to what is probably the single biggest factor that separates our world today from the world of World War I and World War II. There is one concept that completely changed the rules of the game. This quote from our source material really just nails it. There's a level of caution baked into global politics now that it didn't exist 100 years ago. Leaders of the most powerful nations on Earth know that a direct, all-out war doesn't just mean tanks and planes anymore. It means something way, way scarier. And this caution isn't just a vague idea or a hope. It's actually a formal military doctrine that has shaped the entire globe for more than 70 years. And it's called nuclear deterrence. The idea itself is pretty straightforward, but its impact is massive. Basically, because multiple countries have weapons that can cause just unimaginable destruction, no major power can risk a direct war with another one without facing the very real possibility of its own complete destruction. It's a standoff, where the cost of winning is just too terrifyingly high for anyone to pay. So here's the wild paradox at the center of it all. These weapons, the most destructive things ever created by humanity, have, in a very strange way, become a primary force for preventing an all-out global war. The shared mutual fear of a nuclear endgame forces everyone to pump the brakes. Now, it doesn't stop regional conflicts or proxy wars, but it does create this invisible, terrifying line that leaders are incredibly reluctant to cross. Okay, so after all that, where does it leave us? We've talked about the fear, we've defined the terms, and we've looked at the massive, game-changing role of nuclear weapons. Let's try to put all those pieces together. Here's the bottom line. It would be completely wrong to just dismiss the tensions in the world today. They are very real, and they are very serious. But it's just as important to understand that the actual bar for a true world war is incredibly high. Thanks to nuclear deterrence, leaders know the potential outcome is catastrophic, and that simple fact makes a full-scale conflict something that is very, very difficult to start. So the goal isn't to just ignore what's happening. The goal is to understand it. Know the difference between a serious regional conflict and a global war. Always remember the powerful, sobering reality of nuclear deterrence. When you stay truly informed, you can start to replace that feeling of just raw anxiety with a clear, realistic view of the world. And I'll just leave you with this one last thought to chew on. We've kind of established that just because we're not in a world war doesn't mean everything is perfectly harmonious. So it really begs the question, in this complex, modern, totally interconnected world that we live in, what does peace actually look like? And how do we even begin to work towards it?